Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the * Imperial Dominance Star. His 4 purple eyes scanned the daily patrol reports with growing boredom. The Third Fleet had been patrolling this sector of space for 3 months without encountering anything more exciting than smugglers trying to avoid tribute taxes. The bridge hummed with the quiet efficiency that marked all Imperial vessels. Crew members from a dozen different alien species worked at their stations, their movements precise and practiced. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, and this routine patrol was just another reminder of their absolute dominance. Kethvar was reviewing a particularly tedious report about mineral extraction quotas when the bridge doors hissed open. His communications officer, Jix, burst through them with unusual urgency. The young Alteran's normally pale blue skin had turned a worried shade of green, and his 3-fingered hands shook as he clutched a datapad. "Admiral," Jix stammered, his voice higher than usual. "Sir, we have a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting an unknown fleet approaching our sector." Kethvar's attention sharpened immediately. Unknown fleets were rare in Imperial space. Most species had been catalogued and classified centuries ago. He stood up from his command chair, his tall frame casting shadows across the tactical display that dominated the center of the bridge. "Show me," he commanded. The main display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. At the edge of their sensor range, hundreds of red dots moved in perfect formation. Kethvar had seen many fleets in his 40 years of service, but this configuration was completely unfamiliar. The ships appeared to be sleek and angular, unlike the bulky designs favored by most Imperial species. Even stranger, they seemed to bend light around them, creating a subtle distortion effect that made them difficult to focus on. The sensor readings flickered and jumped as if the ships existed in multiple places at once. "Energy signatures are unprecedented, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Nextal from the sensor station. The insectoid officer's compound eyes reflected the dancing lights of his instruments. "Their technology appears to operate on principles we don't recognize. The power readings are impossible." Kethvar frowned. Impossible was not a word used lightly in Imperial service. The Empire's technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy. They had absorbed the best innovations from hundreds of conquered species over millennia. Nothing should be beyond their understanding. "How many ships?" he asked. "Initial count suggests 350 vessels, sir. But the numbers keep changing. Our sensors are having difficulty maintaining consistent readings." Kethvar walked closer to the display, studying the formation. The unknown ships moved with mathematical precision, maintaining perfect spacing even as they traveled at speeds that should have made such coordination impossible. It was like watching a single organism rather than a fleet of individual vessels. "Time to intercept." "At their current speed, approximately 6 hours, sir." 6 hours. Kethvar had that long to figure out what he was dealing with. He activated his personal communicator and opened a priority channel to Imperial High Command on Zentari Prime. The response came within minutes, carried by the arrogant voice of Admiral Qexmore, one of High Command's most senior officers. "What is it, Kethvar? Your report mentions an unknown fleet. Surely the Third Fleet can handle a few rogue vessels without bothering High Command." "Sir, with respect, this appears to be something significant. The fleet numbers in the hundreds, and their technology is beyond our current understanding." A dismissive laugh echoed through the communicator. "Beyond our understanding? Impossible. You're probably looking at another client species with retrofitted cargo haulers. Some minor world trying to avoid their tribute payments by putting on a show of force. Deal with it according to standard protocols." "But Admiral, the energy readings." "Standard protocols, Kethvar. Show them Imperial might, collect their tribute, and file your report. High Command has more important matters to attend to." The communication cut off, leaving Kethvar staring at the tactical display. Standard protocols meant a show of force followed by demands for surrender. It was a routine that had worked for centuries against rebellious planets and pirate fleets. But as he watched the unknown vessels continue their steady approach, something cold settled in his stomach. These ships moved with purpose and confidence that suggested they knew exactly what they were doing. "Sir," Lieutenant Nextal called out, his voice tight with concern. "I'm getting trajectory calculations. The fleet's course is taking them directly toward the Sol system." Sol system. Kethvar accessed the Imperial database with a few quick commands. Sol was listed as a minor tributary world, home to a species called humans. They had been incorporated into the Empire only 60 years ago, classified as a primitive civilization barely capable of interstellar travel. Their tribute payments were small but regular, consisting mainly of raw materials and a few cultural artifacts. The humans were considered so insignificant that they rated only a single page in the Imperial Species database. Bipedal mammals, average intelligence, no remarkable technologies. They lived on a single world and had established only a few small colonies in their immediate stellar neighborhood. Jix, Kethvar called to his communications officer. Pull up everything we have on the humans in the Sol system. As Jix worked at his console, Kethvar continued to study the approaching fleet. The ships maintained their perfect formation, their strange energy signatures growing stronger as they drew closer. Whatever these vessels were, they were definitely not cargo haulers. Sir, Jix said quietly, looking up from his data pad with wide, frightened eyes. Whatever those ships are, they're not cargo haulers. And if they're heading for Sol system? Kethvar nodded grimly. The implication was clear and terrifying. If this mysterious fleet was connected to the humans, then everything the Empire thought it knew about that insignificant species was wrong. Agent Veltara sat in her cramped office deep within the intelligence division of Imperial Central Command. The walls were lined with data screens showing information streams from across the galaxy. As one of the Empire's most skilled analysts, she had been tasked with investigating the mysterious fleet heading toward Sol system. Her six-fingered hands moved quickly across the holographic interface as she pulled up every file the Empire had on humanity. What she expected to find was evidence of secret alien allies helping the humans develop advanced technology. What she found instead made her blood run cold. The humans had been busy. Very busy. According to official reports, humanity was still classified as a primitive species with basic space travel capabilities. But buried in the data were inconsistencies that painted a very different picture. Mining operations in their asteroid belt had increased by 3,000% in the last 20 years. Energy consumption in their outer colonies had jumped to levels that should have been impossible with their reported technology. Most disturbing of all were the gaps in surveillance data. For a species supposedly under Imperial monitoring, there were long periods where human activities simply disappeared from Imperial sensors. It was as if entire fleets and installations had learned to become invisible. Veltara pulled up transmission logs from human colonies. The official communications were exactly what the Empire expected: boring reports about farming and mining operations. But hidden in the background noise of these transmissions were data patterns that suggested something much more sophisticated. The humans were talking to each other using communication methods that Imperial technology couldn't even detect properly. She was still analyzing the data when every communication system in the building suddenly activated at once. A voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, the universal language of the Empire. The accent was strange but the words were clear and precise. This is Admiral Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are broadcasting on all Imperial frequencies. We seek immediate dialogue regarding the cessation of tribute demands on human colonies and the establishment of peaceful relations between our civilizations. Veltara stared at her screens in shock. Terran Defense Fleet? According to Imperial records, the humans had maybe 50 small patrol ships total. A defense fleet implied hundreds or thousands of vessels with military capabilities. Within minutes, her communication console was buzzing with priority calls from across Imperial command. She could hear shouting and chaos in the background as officers tried to understand what they had just heard. The emergency session of the Imperial Council was called within the hour. Veltara found herself standing before the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy, trying to explain what she had discovered about humanity. The council chamber was a massive dome lined with floating seats, each occupied by a different species that helped rule the Empire. Supreme Commander Thalmos, a towering reptilian with scales that shifted color based on his mood, listened to her report with growing irritation. His scales had turned a deep red that indicated barely controlled anger. "You're telling us," Thalmos said slowly, "that these primitive humans have somehow developed advanced technology without our knowledge?" "The evidence suggests they have been preparing for this moment for decades, sir," Veltara replied. "Their true capabilities have been hidden behind carefully maintained deceptions." The council erupted in laughter. Councillor Jextar, whose species had been conquered by the Empire 3 centuries ago, was particularly amused. Humans? Those soft bipeds who can barely manage to keep their tribute payments on schedule? Impossible. "Admiral Kim," scoffed another councillor. "What kind of name is that for a military leader? The humans barely had interstellar capability when we first contacted them. Now they claim to have a defense fleet." Supreme Commander Thalmos stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "This is clearly some kind of primitive bluff. Deploy Battle Group 7 to the coordinates." Admiral Nextar will remind these upstart humans of their proper place in the galactic order. Veltara tried to object. Sir, I recommend caution. The data suggests. The data suggests nothing more than improved mining efficiency, Thalmos interrupted. Deploy Battle Group 7 immediately. Full combat readiness. Show these humans what happens when client species forget their place. 3 hours later, Battle Group 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates where the mysterious fleet was waiting. Admiral Nextar commanded the battle group from his flagship, the Imperial Wrath *, a massive dreadnought that had never been defeated in combat. The human fleet was exactly where long-range sensors had predicted it would be. But up close, the ships looked even stranger than they had on distant scans. They seemed to exist in a state of constant flux, their outlines shifting and blurring as if they were not entirely present in normal space. All weapons, target the lead vessels, Nextar commanded. Fire warning shots across their bows. Let them see Imperial firepower. The weapons officer pressed the firing controls. Nothing happened. Sir, weapons are not responding, the officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. What do you mean not responding? The targeting systems are active, sir, but the weapons themselves appear to be offline. All of them. Across the battle group, the same reports came in from every ship. Weapon systems that had functioned perfectly moments before were now completely non-responsive. It was as if something had simply turned them off. On the tactical display, the human ships began to move. They didn't accelerate like normal vessels. Instead, they seemed to phase in and out of existence, appearing in new positions without traveling through the space between. One moment a human ship would be 1,000 kilometers away, the next moment it would be right beside an Imperial vessel. Sir, the sensor officer called out, his voice high with panic. The human ships are existing in multiple locations simultaneously. Our sensors are tracking the same vessel in 4 different positions. Admiral Nextar watched in growing horror as his massive battle group, designed to crush entire planetary defense forces, became completely helpless. The human ships moved through space like ghosts, unaffected by the laws of physics that governed everything else in the universe. Command, Nextar transmitted to Imperial headquarters, his voice shaking. These aren't primitive humans. They've developed technology that operates on principles we never imagined. They've surpassed our capabilities in ways that should be impossible. The response from Supreme Commander Thalmos was immediate and furious. Impossible. Use your backup systems. Ram them if necessary. But Admiral Nextar was already realizing the terrible truth. The humans hadn't just caught up to Imperial technology. They had leaped far beyond it using methods that made the Empire's greatest achievements look like stone tools. Admiral Kim Tai stood on the bridge of the New Sol *, watching the Imperial battle group through the main display screen. The massive Imperial warships floated helplessly in space, their weapon systems completely disabled. She felt no satisfaction in their confusion, only a deep sadness that it had come to this point. The bridge around her was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of individual control stations, the entire room hummed with a soft blue light that connected every surface. Kim Tai didn't need to speak commands or touch controls. Her thoughts flowed directly into the ship's consciousness, and the ship responded as naturally as her own body. Through the quantum link, she felt the presence of Captain Park Su aboard the Busan's Pride * and Commander Lee Da on the Incheon Shield Star. Their minds touched hers across impossible distances, sharing information and coordinating actions with perfect unity. No other species in the galaxy could achieve this level of connection. The Imperial ships are trying to restart their weapon systems, Parks' thoughts whispered in her mind. Should we disable their engines as well? Not yet, Kim Tai replied through the link. Let them understand what they are facing first. The story of how humanity had reached this moment began 23 years ago on Mars. A mining expedition drilling through the polar ice had broken through into a vast underground chamber. What they found there changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The ruins were ancient beyond human understanding, built by a civilization that had existed millions of years before humans had even evolved. But these weren't just old buildings or broken machines. They were something far more profound. The civilization had learned to transcend the physical limitations that bound all other known species. At first, human scientists had tried to simply copy what they found. The technology was based on principles that seemed to violate every law of physics. Matter that existed in multiple states simultaneously, consciousness that could be shared across vast distances, energy that could be shaped by pure thought. But humans had done something that surprised even themselves. Instead of just copying the ancient technology, they had understood it. More than that, they had improved it, revolutionized it, and made it uniquely human. The breakthrough had come when Dr. Song Minute realized that human consciousness was uniquely suited to interface with quantum fields. While other species thought in linear patterns, human minds could hold contradictory concepts simultaneously. This ability, which had often seemed like a weakness, turned out to be humanity's greatest strength. "Admiral," came the voice of Lieutenant Cho Hai from the communication station. "The Imperial flagship is requesting to speak with you directly." Kim Tai nodded. It was time for the next phase of the demonstration. "Open the channel," she said. The face of Admiral Nextar appeared on the screen. His reptilian features were twisted with confusion and barely controlled fear. Behind him, Kim Tai could see Imperial officers running between stations, trying desperately to restore their weapons. "What have you done to our ships?" Nextar demanded. "What kind of weapon are you using?" "We haven't used any weapons," Kim Tai replied calmly. "Your systems are functioning exactly as they were designed to function. We've simply adjusted the quantum fields around your ships to prevent your weapons from firing." "That's impossible. Quantum fields can't be manipulated on that scale." Kim Tai smiled sadly. "Admiral Nextar, your empire has spent 2,000 years conquering species and taking their technology. But you've never truly understood what you were taking. You've collected tools without understanding the principles behind them." She turned to her tactical officer. "Begin phase shift demonstration protocol." What happened next would be talked about in Imperial military academies for generations to come. Across the galaxy, in 12 different Imperial systems simultaneously, human ships simply appeared. Not through hyperspace travel, not through any known form of faster-than-light movement. They just existed where they hadn't existed before. In the Zentari system, home to Imperial High Command, 50 human vessels materialized in perfect formation around the capital planet. In the Korthak system, humanity's most advanced ships appeared alongside the Empire's most secret military research facilities. In system after system, the same impossible phenomenon occurred. Each human ship existed in a state of quantum uncertainty that made them immune to conventional weapons. When Imperial forces tried to target them, their weapons simply couldn't lock onto something that existed in multiple probability states at once. The human ships could phase in and out of normal spacetime, appearing solid when they chose to be seen and becoming as insubstantial as ghosts when attacked. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't the ships themselves. It was how they moved together. Through their networked consciousness, human crews could coordinate with precision that no other species could match. Each fleet acted like a single organism with hundreds of eyes and hands, responding to threats and opportunities within human speed and accuracy. The demonstration lasted exactly 1 hour. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the human ships in 11 of the 12 systems simply vanished, leaving only confused Imperial forces staring at empty space. Emergency sessions were called in every Imperial government building across the galaxy. Within hours, a delegation of the Empire's highest-ranking officials had gathered via holographic conference to speak directly with Kim Tai. Supreme Commander Thalmos appeared on the screen, his scales now a pale yellow that indicated deep uncertainty. Around him sat the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, all staring at the human admiral with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. "What do you want?" Thalmos asked simply. Kim Tai looked at each face on the screen before responding. "We're not asking for independence," she said quietly. "We're informing you that the tribute system has ended. Effective immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. The Imperial delegation sat in stunned shock as they realized they weren't facing a rebellion of primitive humans. They were facing the next step in galactic evolution, and that step was leaving them behind. Emperor Kothrak had ruled the Galactic Empire for 300 years. In all that time, no species had ever dared to challenge Imperial authority so directly. The human demonstration across 12 systems had shaken the very foundations of Imperial power, and worse, other client species were beginning to whisper about rebellion. The Emperor stood in the command center of his personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion *, surrounded by the most advanced technology the Empire had ever created. Around him floated holographic displays showing the positions of 10,000 Imperial warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "Your Majesty," said Admiral Kexvor, his chief military advisor, "the First Fleet is fully assembled and ready for combat. Every ship in the Armada represents the pinnacle of Imperial engineering. This force could conquer entire star systems." Kothrak's 8 tentacles writhed with barely controlled rage. His species had evolved from ocean predators, and when threatened, every instinct told him to strike with overwhelming force. The humans had embarrassed the Empire in front of the entire galaxy. That could not stand. The plan is simple, he declared to his assembled commanders. We will annihilate the human fleet so completely that no trace remains. Every ship, every crew member, everything. When we are finished, no species will ever dare challenge Imperial authority again. The Imperial Armada moved through hyperspace like a massive wave of destruction. Each ship was a monument to Imperial power, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. The plan was to arrive at Proxima System in a formation that would surround any human forces and destroy them before they could use their strange phasing technology. But when the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Emperor Kothrak realized immediately that something was terribly wrong. They had expected to face a few hundred human vessels. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by thousands of ships that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The human fleet had grown enormously since their first appearance, and their vessels had become even stranger and more advanced. Tactical report, Kothrak demanded. Sir, stammered the fleet sensor officer, we're detecting approximately 4,000 human vessels, but the numbers keep changing. Some ships appear to be existing in several dimensions simultaneously. Our targeting computers cannot achieve weapon locks. On the tactical display, the human ships moved in patterns that defied understanding. They flowed through space like schools of fish in a three-dimensional ocean, each vessel perfectly coordinated with thousands of others. It was unlike any military formation the Empire had ever encountered. Admiral Yunhao aboard the Daegu Defender felt the quantum consciousness link connecting her to every human ship in the fleet. Through the link, she could sense Captain Choi Minute aboard the Gwangju Guardian coordinating defensive patterns, while Commander Jung Ho on the Soul Strength managed offensive capabilities. The human fleet had evolved far beyond individual ships operating independently. Each vessel was now a component of a larger organism, connected through quantum-entangled consciousness networks that allowed them to think and act as one unified entity while maintaining individual capabilities. Begin adaptive formation protocol, Yoon had thought through the network. What happened next was something the Imperial military had never seen before. Human ships began to merge and separate at will, their hulls flowing together like liquid metal before splitting apart again. Crews transferred between vessels through quantum tunnels, allowing engineers to repair damage instantly and tactical officers to coordinate from multiple positions simultaneously. Emperor Kothrak watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized battle formation became chaos. Imperial ships fired at human vessels that simply weren't there anymore by the time the weapons reached their targets. The humans existed in a state of quantum uncertainty that made conventional warfare impossible. All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, he commanded. The Imperial fleet unleashed enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. Thousands of energy beams and missile barrages converged on the human ships in that sector. But the humans simply phase-shifted into parallel dimensions, letting the Imperial weapons pass harmlessly through empty space before reappearing behind the Imperial lines. Then the human counterattack began. But it wasn't like any military assault in Imperial experience. The humans didn't try to destroy Imperial ships. Instead, they used precision phase-shift technology to disable weapons and engines while leaving life support systems completely intact. Imperial crews found their mighty warships suddenly powerless but perfectly safe. One by one, the ships of the Imperial Armada were neutralized. The massive dreadnoughts that had conquered star systems became helpless hulks floating in space. But every crew member remained alive, every life support system continued functioning normally. Captain Choi Minute coordinated the systematic disabling of Imperial vessels with surgical precision. Through the quantum consciousness network, human crews could see every Imperial ship simultaneously and target exactly the systems needed to neutralize threats without causing casualties. Your Majesty, Admiral Kexvor reported, his voice shaking with disbelief, we've lost weapons capability on 60% of the fleet. But they're not destroying us. Every disabled ship still has full life support and communications. Emperor Kothrak stared at the tactical display in growing terror. His overwhelming force was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that could have obliterated every Imperial ship within minutes but chose not to. The humans were demonstrating mercy on a scale that was almost incomprehensible. What manner of species shows restraint when they hold absolute advantage? He whispered to his aide, a young officer whose face had turned pale with shock. The aide had no answer. In Imperial culture, overwhelming advantage meant complete destruction of the enemy. The concept of mercy toward a defeated foe was almost unknown. Yet the humans were sparing the lives of 10 million Imperial crew members who had come to destroy them. As the last Imperial weapons fell silent, Admiral Yunhe's voice came over the communication channels. Her tone was calm, almost gentle. "Emperor Kothrak," she said, "your crews are safe and will remain so. We suggest you consider what you have witnessed here today. The age of conquest through force has ended. A new age of cooperation through understanding has begun." 3 weeks after the battle at Proxima System, Admiral Kim Tai stood in the central meeting hall of Harmony Point, a neutral space station that had served as a diplomatic meeting ground for centuries. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all waiting to hear humanity's proposal for the future of the galaxy. The Imperial Council sat at one end of the great curved table, their faces showing a mixture of fear, curiosity, and barely concealed anger. Emperor Kothrak himself was present, his 8 tentacles moving restlessly as he studied the human admiral who had humiliated his greatest fleet without firing a single destructive shot. Kim Tai looked around the room at the assembled delegates. She saw species that had been enemies for millennia sitting side by side, united by their shared uncertainty about what would happen next. The old order was crumbling, and everyone knew it. "Representatives of the galaxy," Kim Tai began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems, "we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors seeking a better future." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones marked areas of conflict, yellow showed regions under Imperial military occupation, and tiny green dots indicated the few truly free worlds. For 2,000 years, this galaxy has been organized around the principle of domination. The strong take from the weak, and the weak serve the strong. This system has brought order, but at a terrible cost in freedom and innovation. Councillor Hextar of the Vorthak Confederacy interrupted. "You speak of freedom, but what you demonstrated was superior force. How are you different from the Empire?" Kim Tai nodded. "The difference is in our goals and our methods. We don't seek to rule you. We seek to offer you a choice." She changed the holographic display to show humanity's quantum phase technology in action. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions, communication systems that worked instantly across any distance, and manufacturing processes that could create anything from pure energy. Our quantum phase technology could revolutionize travel, communication, and resource distribution throughout the galaxy, Kim Tai explained. Imagine cargo ships that could deliver supplies to any world instantly. Communication networks that would let every species share knowledge freely. Manufacturing systems that could end scarcity forever. The room buzzed with excited whispers. The implications were staggering. Technologies like these could transform entire civilizations overnight. "We offer to share this technology freely," Kim Tai continued, "but only with species that renounce domination and embrace cooperation. The age of taking what you want by force must end." Emperor Kothrak's tentacles writhed angrily. "And if we refuse? Will you use your superior weapons to force compliance?" "No," Kim Tai replied simply. "If you choose to continue as you are, we will leave you alone. But we will also share our technology with any world that chooses cooperation over conquest. Eventually, you will find yourselves surrounded by civilizations far more advanced than your own." Over the following months, the transformation began. Captain Parks, who established the first joint human-alien research facility on the moon of Kepler 442b. Working alongside former Imperial scientists, human researchers taught the principles of quantum phase manipulation while learning about alien approaches to biotechnology and energy manipulation. The collaboration was remarkable. Dr. Zintal, a crystalline researcher who had spent decades studying temporal mechanics, combined her knowledge with human quantum consciousness techniques to create communication systems that could send messages backward through time. Engineer Molvar of the Silicon Brotherhood worked with Commander Lee Da to develop construction techniques that could build entire cities from quantum-shifted matter. News of these breakthroughs spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed under Imperial rule began sending secret delegations to human worlds, asking to join the growing cooperative network. The Aquarian Collective was the first to officially request membership, followed quickly by the telepathic unions of Rigel and the Free Traders of the Outer Rim. Each new member brought unique knowledge and capabilities. The humans discovered that their quantum consciousness techniques worked differently with each species, creating new possibilities they had never imagined. The cat-like Felinians could process quantum probability calculations at incredible speeds. The plant-based Vedani could interface directly with living quantum fields. The energy beings of the nebula cluster could exist in quantum states that even human technology couldn't achieve. Emperor Kothrak watched his empire dissolve from within. Entire star systems declared independence and immediately requested to join the human-led Federation. Imperial military units abandoned their posts to work with human engineers. Even his own Imperial Guard began asking questions about quantum consciousness technology. The end came not with war or rebellion, but with a simple realization. The old way of doing things no longer worked. Force and domination had become obsolete in a galaxy where cooperation offered unlimited possibilities. On the first anniversary of the Battle of Proxima System, Emperor Kothrak signed the Terran Accords aboard Harmony Point. The document formally dissolved the Galactic Empire and established the Galactic Cooperative, a voluntary alliance of worlds dedicated to mutual aid and shared advancement. As Kothrak's tentacle touched the signing pad, he looked up at Admiral Kim Tai. "I still don't understand," he said quietly. "You could have ruled us all. Why choose this instead?" Kim Tai smiled. "Because ruling others was never the point. Growing together was." The ceremony was witnessed by Admiral Yoon Ha, Captain Choi Minute, and representatives from 4 to 7 worlds. As the accords were signed, quantum communication networks instantly carried the news to every corner of the galaxy. Standing at the observation deck afterward, Kim Tai reflected on humanity's journey. Their greatest weapon hadn't been their quantum technology or their advanced ships. It had been their fundamental belief that all thinking species deserved dignity, freedom, and the chance to reach their full potential. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in galactic history, that change promised hope instead of fear.